Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Lowdown on Low Code, brought to you by your friends at analysis.tech. It is a mostly weekly podcast devoted to the goings on and the directions of low code. And today, we're very happy to have a panel of guests with us to help us understand one of the key aspects of the future of low code, which is, of course, AI. At Analysis.tech, our research has been 100% about the impact of AI, the benefits of AI in low code and in application development writ large. And of course, this kind of the sharp end of this trend is something called vibe coding. We've published a report about that. If you want to go have a look at it. And I just see vibe coding all the time now. It's on everybody's LinkedIn posts. It's everywhere. It's really an important trend. Now, there are a lot of vendors out there that are working this trend, and they come at it from different angles. Uh, we did a panel a couple of weeks ago where we had vendors coming at it from different kind of use case points. Today, we've got 4 vendors who are coming at it. A couple of vendors are established and they're adding vibe coding to their portfolios. And then we've got a couple of vendors that are either new or startups who are trying to disrupt. And so we think it's a great group to help us understand this trend. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. We'll start with Ryan Cunningham, who is a corporate VP Power Platform at Microsoft. Ryan, welcome.
It's good to be here, John.
Ryan and I met years and years ago, and it is his first appearance on the Lowdown on Low Code. So we're really psyched to have him. Thanks for
Finally
joining.
broke down and invited me, John. Thanks for the chance.
Next, Jithan Bhaskar. Jithan, welcome back. You were one of our first guests on Lowdown on Low Code, and it's really good to see you again. We're happy that you're here.
Excited to be here with you all.
And we have another repeat guest, our friend Sean Allen from Retool. Sean, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thanks, John.
And then last but not least, Ghazi Masood, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Replit. And Ghazi, this makes Replit having 2 in a row on Lowdown on Low Code. We had one of your colleagues last week.
We did.
Thanks very much for joining. We're very happy to have you.
Yeah. Thank you. Excited to be here.
So without further ado, let's get started with the elephant in the room. As the co-inventor of the term low code, you can imagine I'm a little bit bummed when I hear repeatedly and often that vibe coding will kill low code. It's an interesting statement. I think I have to say it's more than clickbait. People are really having a good debate out there. So Ghazi, let's start with you. What do you say? Is vibe coding going to kill low code or just change it?
I think if you are a low code vendor and you have not transitioned into the world of AI and vibe coding, you're in trouble. And you will be in trouble. I think with the AI ecosystem and the AI world we live in, the value proposition, as you and I and others here on the call have felt about low code, no code, is no longer relevant. Low code, no code is no longer relevant in the world of AI. And unless you pivot and grasp that vision, I think you will struggle. That's my personal philosophy.
I'll take that as a resounding yes.
Yes.
Okay. Jithan, over to you. What do you say?
I have a slightly different point of view than Ghazi. For me, vibe coding is the best UI we have got across the spectrum of no code, low code, and pro code. And as a product leader who's building this every day, the way I think about it is that it's an omnipresent layer, vibe coding. It's not a substitute for any of these modalities, which I just spoke about. I'll leave it there.
Very good. Sean, what's your thought?
I think I think is how I'd categorize it so far. For me, and John, you and I go way back in the low code space. I remember actually arguing with you about the name low code way back when you came out with it. I'm like, come on, man, why you got to start with a word like low? Obviously, I lost that. I lost that battle. You know, the problem that the vendors at that time and the vendors forever in the space had been trying to solve is just how do organizations operate internal software quickly, safely, and repeatedly without every request going to engineering. So it really is just about how are we solving that problem and applying the best technologies of the day to that. So we've learned things over time. One of them is that code itself isn't the enemy, but when you're trying to keep it off of an engineer's doorstep, it can be challenging. Right? So visual canvases came about to help solve that problem. And we swung the pendulum a little bit too far at that time because code became this obscure thing that was an escape hatch. And it created this artificially low ceiling. And now with the advent of generative AI, we have an opportunity not to swing the pendulum all the way over to there and say that the only modality of creation, of converting the intent of what I want to build into something that's actually running and providing me value. Natural language isn't the only modality. We need to learn from the past. We need to use all of the modalities, and they need to be first-class citizens in the IDE that I choose, right? And that is only solving the building part of the equation, right? That is the start part of the equation. We need to worry about the rest of it, but won't hog the mic. But I think the answer is that it's a hybrid. It's not dead. We're just approaching the problem in an evolved way.
Gee, I'm shocked, Sean, that you would point out that in our industry, we fall for shiny object syndrome all the time. It's like, oh, here's a new thing. Student body left. Everybody does a new thing and everything else is dead. The problem is nothing dies. But anyway, modalities. That's a really good word, a really good concept. Ryan, sorry, I went out of alphabetical order and
it's
picked
okay.
one ahead of you. But tell us what your point of view is over at Microsoft.
I think there's a lot we agree with around this table. I think we have been operating what is arguably the most widely adopted low-code platform on the planet. We assembled 8,000 of our most fervent users into a room in Las Vegas a few months ago, and the first slide we put up was "low code is dead." We have somebody who has launched, now vibe.powerapps.com. We are not at all shy about where we think the direction of the industry is going and going very, very quickly. But I think everything that, Jitin and Sean is saying is absolutely true. I think we have sort of overly reductively equated the term low code with drag and drop and point and click. And that certainly has a time and a place, but is no longer the state of the art of expressing requirements to generate code. All of us have been building code generation platforms, all of these things, whether it's a business application declaratively turning logic and data schema into UX or a drag and drop tool, at the end of the day, where do you think these experiences come from? Code gets generated. Just historically, we've been very limited to the declarative artifacts and concepts in terms of what can get generated and the logic that can, come out the other side. And that is what has changed dramatically. We've removed the constraint, right? We no longer have to have a drag and drop component or a predefined data model. We can generate a lot more value a lot more quickly. And in that mindset, in many ways, what we're now calling vibe coding or agent centric code, it is in some ways the truest encapsulation of the dream of low code, which is shorten the distance between a human with a need and instructions to computers. And in that case, yes, the mechanisms of the past, have limitations. We got to blow past real quick, but the mission is probably more relevant now than it ever has been. And that's not just in the last 5 years. That is all we've been doing for software development for 40, 50 years is adding layers of abstraction so we don't need to muck around in low-level assembly code. We are now at the point of the next major layer of abstraction, and that gets super exciting.
Right. That's really interesting. Thank you. Okay. Vibe coding has been described as English programming or programming in English. The person using at the interface is using plain language to describe needs, requirements, structures, etc. That's a very different way of working from the past, certainly for programmers who learned a language, who would learn one or more languages and frameworks and really, master that technical expression. as a way of accomplishing their mission. So does the advent of this new interface sort of will it drive changes to um, roles and the work that those roles do? You know, do you want to see your programmers put Java away and focus on prompting and really getting the prompting right, and really focusing on that? Does it mean that business people can actually go from idea to production? It seems to augur a number of changes. Jithan, let's start with you. What are you seeing in this regard? You know, as your customers employ what you're building, and where do you think it's going to go?
I'm really excited about the whole vibe coding emerging as one of the best way for us to build software at the moment. Let's go back to the history of how software has been built for the last many decades. If you really think about it, when we all came out of our schools long time back, we all started dabbling into C, and C was the basic way of building software long time back. That was our beginning. And you can go even longer time back in terms of how it is. Then came along the whole world of scripting, and scripting changed and gave a lot more people access to actually build software. You do not need to really infer and understand the complexities of compiling a C language on a computer or a system. Scripting was the next thing, and scripting evolved into more or less like a low code experiences and interfaces. And if you really look at it, we started all the way from a CLI interface to scripting to low code. And what the industry or all these amazing innovators were trying to solve was, how do we give access to this amazing innovation to a broader spectrum of people? And for me, the reason why I'm really excited about the vibe coding is because I truly believe, being in the enterprise corporate world for the many years, the people at the edge of the operations in the business, they know how best to actually solve the business process bottlenecks and the problems and the innovations. Now, vibe coding really gives all of them that ignition switch to be able to start building, right? But going back to what Sean was saying, right, it is a way for you to get started and start building, but then effectively you really need platforms which can take the build and make sure it runs through the right buttons and controls and security layers so that it has the right guardrails in place so that you now can take an idea of an application which could be running a business operations within a company, and you can scale it globally across many teams, functions, and departments. So vibe coding for me is a great ignition switch where you get an idea to app in a matter of minutes. And then how do you now take that idea, leveraging all these modalities, which we just spoke about, what Ryan was saying, or Gasi was earlier mentioning too, and making sure that application is not just a individual productivity app or a toy or a hobby app from an enterprise world point of view, because that's where I come from, but ability to scale that into highly governed, controlled, and at the same time meets all the security and regulatory requirements within an enterprise world. Many of our customers are actually the federal government, highly regulated market in terms of how do we think about it. That's my perspective. So when you kind of sum it all together, right, the role of every coder gets amplified with the layer I spoke about, leveraging vibe coding as a 10x productivity, converting an idea or a line of code into real scalable applications. That's the way I put it in terms of why I'm super excited about the way we are emerging to this phase. This is probably the fifth phase of how you build software, which I believe is going to disrupt everything the way I really align with Ghazi in terms of what he's talking about, right? This is a new world of building software, but this cuts across every layer of stack or modality, which we actually speak about.
Right. Ignition switch is a really good metaphor. I like that. Ryan, over to you. What are you guys seeing? You got a lot of folks using vibe coding out there. What sort of role changes are you seeing?
I think I definitely agree a lot with what Chitin is saying. Like, the hard part of software has never been creating the first draft of the UX. Like, that's always been relatively cheap, and it's certainly getting cheaper. And we're having this moment, and all of our LinkedIn feeds are filled up with, look at this amazing thing I built in 60 seconds. I think that's actually a little bit of a lie, because the hard, that's never been the long pole. The long pole is what do we need to build in the first place? And then how do we actually ship it? Like, what does it really mean to integrate it and secure it and scale it and support it? And who's going to get the call in the middle of the night a year from now when it goes down? And how do we prevent it from going down in the first place? That's why platforms are important. That's why technologists are. And the role of a developer, though, in that system is, it's not going to change. It has already dramatically changed. I think if there are software engineering teams out there who are still predominantly handwriting code, file new project forms over data app in traditional languages, like, that's going to very quickly start to feel like canning on the weekend. That's the artisanal thing we used to do and are going to do again for fun. Like, the role of a developer is now very much shifting to, how do I manage my coding agents well? How do I spec things well for them? How do I create the right context for them? How do I evaluate the quality of what they're building? How do I deal with all of the merge conflicts that come when I'm texting the output of lines of code on a daily basis? So there are real engineering challenges now to how to build for an agent-first coding system. And that is dramatically shifting the role of a software engineer or a developer who gets paid for that. I think the other thing that is changing, though, is the wall between people who get paid to write code and everybody else with a real job. And I think that's the big gap historically. Is a lot of what made software slow was getting the expertise out of an HR person or a finance person or a supply chain person and putting it to the head of a software engineer and hoping the right thing came out the other side. That is a gap we can dramatically close. The challenge is just, not a lot of people with real jobs woke up this morning and said, I want to build an agentic AI application. And so it's sort of, how do you get the right tools into the right hands with the right context so that people can turn what they do wake up with every day, man, this part of my job sucks, I really wish I didn't have to do that over and over again, and start to turn that into real solutions that they can ship to.
Thank you. That's great. So the work really changes for those programmers, those developers. Sean, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing a bunch of engineers who think they have real jobs too.
Yeah.
But I think the playing field has shifted, and those engineers with those real jobs are now in a position to not have to worry about some of the low hanging fruit that was hoisted at their feet.
Yeah.
And the platform approach that you see taken in a lot of the approaches that are represented on this panel are a way for engineers to still do the sophisticated work that engineers need to do. I don't think that natural language prompting and generative AI into low level code changes that. Engineers are still engineers, and when you need sophistication, when you need scale, when you need to build something that is impactful across your entire enterprise, engineers don't go away. However, the significant amount of tooling that we had been thinking about over the last decade and making progress on with the best technology at the time, you hear folks talking about AI coming for jobs. That is not happening. Right, not in this space, because what's happening is the art of the possible has exploded the demand. Right now, I, as a business user, as somebody who lives next to the problem every day, I can go and I understand that I now have at my discretion the ability to go and do things. Now, can I do it in a secure way? Can I do it in a governed way? Is it properly guardrailed? All of the other things that that we've talked about here. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You can set that up, right? So from a persona perspective or from a user perspective, a number of engineers turn into, right, and and I agree, engineers turn into kind of architects. They turn into product managers, where they are, their minions are agents off doing work that they need to check in on and do all of that. But some engineers, instead of just turning into kind of like the architects of the guardrails, because you need those, you need folks that are going to codify enterprise rules into your platform. Right? That's a group, that's a persona, that's a user that needs to be able to set that up in the platform. you've also got a group of people that are engineers, mostly pragmatic engineers, folks that care more about the results than they do about how they got there. And there's a lot of dogma in app dev, as we all know, right? So on the pragmatic side of the engineer, they're still going to be doing that sophisticated work. And then you've got a business engineer, right? Somebody who, because like, sorry to the audience, not everybody can build, right? You have some system thinking that is required. There is an approach to how you solve a problem that you need to understand, that just taking your words and converting it into a thing does not give you that superpower. Right. So there are these business engineers who have this systems thinking capability, who live in and around the problem. And if you set it up right, all three of those kind of people live in the same environment, right? They're speaking the same language because they're all guided by the same,
Right.
by the same rules. So I think the walls start to come down. I think the conversations start to get richer, and people are able to do their own thing, whereas before they were stymied by it.
Right. I love this wall. I love to hear that the walls are coming down. I've been an advocate of that for a long, long time. Analysis.tech, my colleagues at Analysis.tech as well. The business engineer that you mentioned, Sean, that role that you mentioned, I was looking at searching around the other day. There's actually some formal um, support for that idea. And I couldn't agree with you more that not everybody can build. More importantly, not everybody wants to build. And that doesn't mean that they have no value in this world. It just means that they won't do that work. Ghazi, walls coming down must be music to your ears as well. Replit has really focused on empowering business experts. So what do you see among the customers, and
Yeah,
how the folks in the business are interacting and collaborating with the
yeah.
technical?
Yeah, I have a slightly different take than all of you on this space. I'm actually sitting here in New York City at a very large financial services organization that's about to select us, and you could imagine the security and governance checks they did before they're moving forward. Let me start off by just from a background perspective, I've done a full 360 on low code, no code. My career in low code, no code started when I left Oracle and I entered the low code, no code market back with K2 Software when Pegasystems and Appian were around, and so I like that's back in the original heyday days. And then from there, I transitioned to another company called Retool, where Sean and I worked together. And now I've gone to the other extreme, which is on the AI end. So I've seen what the art of the possible is, right, of low code, no code, and how it's inspiring. So I think there's a very big misconception that's even been said on this call, and I think is widely known out in the industry, that they think vibe coding and AI is a big UI layer, and that's all it is. And if you actually look at a lot of these tools from an outside in perspective, they may all look the same. They may all look the same, and they're good at creating UI, but that is not reality. And I'm saying that directly because I'm actually experiencing the reality here at Replit. So if you actually look at what we do, yes, we can prototype and build pretty things with a nice UI on it. But we have example after example of customers taking those prototypings into end-to-end production all within Replit. Enterprise grade, mission critical applications that are running their business. We have companies that have started their business with us. So it's not just a UI layer. That is like the first misconception. It is really end-to-end production ready app. And if I look at it and compare it to the low code, no code world to where it is right now, it's basically to the point of like the role of the developer and engineer. The idea with vibe coding and AI is you no longer need to bother and or sanction the developer and engineer to go build. Anybody can go build. So 90% of our users are non-developers and engineers. We don't want them to build. And that doesn't mean their role, so I think their role is changing. So what are they actually there for? They can focus on other more important things within the enterprise outside of building internal tools. Yes, if you're an organization and you have a bunch of other non-developer personas building, they should go to IT and development and show them what's done and get sanctions and approvals to actually roll it out into production. And I think that could be the role of IT and developers and engineers. So that's the big difference we see is like 90% of our users are non developers and engineers. I mean, yes, there is a pocket of developers and engineers that still like to build, and we'll still see those. But that we're seeing that kind of morph and kind of change away. And then this idea of like what is being built, I think is more than just UI, right? It's more than just UI. I think, the ability for us to connect to any data source that a customer has, the ability to do it in a very secure manner that passes all the security guardrails. And then, IT's worst nightmare is governance and audit controls and the ability to provide that end to end. So again, that's where I think if you look at the term vibe coding, there's a misconception in saying that, hey, vibe coding is just really good on the front end. It can't really do the security and the data connectivity in the back end. That's not true. And
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone who's listening to this podcast that feels that way to actually get your hands on the technology. I mean, one of the things we do is we do a thing called competitive dogfooding. And this is something new to me, and I'll kind of just mention it as the last thing here, is in a competitive cycle with a customer where they're looking at Replit, another vibe coding solution that I won't name, and many, many others out there. And if it's a use case we think we can go excel in, what we do is we actually buy platform licenses for the other competing technology. And we basically tell the customer, we'll pay for it. You go try it and come back and you let us know what you can think. And this is, I'm talking about end-to-end production ready applications that require security, governance, data connectivity out of the gate. So again, that's kind of my viewpoint on that.
So I think you highlighted another potential dimension here, which is you would use business people would be able to build what you called internal tools, so behind the firewall maybe.
Right.
Whereas your development teams might continue to work with their existing tool chains and their existing processes, but they would work on outside, customer facing, partner facing. That's another potential dimension here, I think, is what you're
Potentially,
saying.
yeah, or just not even do app development, right? Like why does a
Right,
developer have to go build applications? A developer
right,
has they got 10 hours a day. They have plenty of other things to keep them busy than building internal software.
right,
To go
right,
deal within an organization. So I think it varies by organization and department. But yeah.
great. Okay, thank you. I'm a brief commercial break here. Um, this is the Lowdown on Low Code, brought to you by your friends at analysis.tech. We do new episodes just about every week. If you like this content, content like this is a very lively discussion. Lots of points of view being expressed to help us understand a very important topic going forward. If you like this, hit the like button, hit the share button, tell your friends and neighbors. Lowdown on Low Code is here for the community. Analysis.tech is here for the community to help advance our education and our understanding to make better use of the technology that we rely on. So with that, we will get back to our programming. So we hit the next topic I wanted to discuss in the last in the last set of discussions, which is the role of the business person in software development. One of the key benefits of low code was that business people could play a fundamental role, a really integral role in creating solutions. And this is just really important. Particularly, I've come around to the point of view that the most important automation that we're doing today is to deeply automate operations, supply operations, sales operations, uh, HR, legal, finance, really deeply automate operations for reasons of compliance, for reasons of growth and profitability and so on and so forth. And who else in the organization knows deeply how operations work than the business experts? It's so obvious to me. So is this innovation, vibe coding, going to finally push a lot of organizations over that line and really engage their operations pros, their operations experts in software delivery? I'd love to know what you guys think, and I think we are to you, Ryan, as our starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that is not a future tense question. That's already happening, and it's been happening for quite some time. I think I'll really plus one the point Ghazi was making earlier, and it's true even from the last generation of low code. Like the reason Power Platform is a multi-billion-dollar business with 50 million monthly active users is not because it's good at front-end prototypes. It's because you're shipping production software fully on an abstracted platform that actually does stuff in your business, and a much wider group of people can contribute to that much more efficiently than before. I think that has raised a lot of boats in this industry, not just one product at a time. But I think where there are some challenges there, is certainly we're not vibe coding the general ledger in the way that Andre Karpathy defined vibe coding, which is sort of YOLO on a Saturday, don't look at the bugs, make it up as you go. Like, nobody's being that flippant. It's much more like, how do you create the conditions in which you can actually interact with the way a business operates repeatably and securely, but then enable velocity of experimentation and creativity on top? And, the job of an engineering team and a platform is to create those conditions. The job then of business people, to your question, is to do something useful with them, to really come at it with an opinion. And I think, that's where, even low code as a term sort of sorted the world on the axis of technology expertise. Were you a developer or not? How technical were you? We got to really sort the world on process expertise. Now we have to go, like, as the act of implementing software and the cost and complexity of implementing software continues to trend towards zero, not at zero, but towards it, then the burden of what are we making better in the first place is super important. And I think that's where, it's not just the long tail of people being creative. That's important. But it's also like leaders of business functions need to really get opinionated about what is the goal. The goal is not build more internal software tools. The goal is operate a 10 times better company, 10 times better than your competition, 10 times better than you could do yesterday. What does that look like? I met a customer last month in Australia who said, today it takes me 36 hours to generate a quote for a customer, and that is by far the biggest long pole in my business. It's why I'm losing business to other people. I want it to be 2 hours by June. Like, that is a use case, right? And that's an excellent transformation use case because it's a constraint, not necessarily a predetermined outcome. She did not say, I want to ship a chatbot, or I want to ship an agent, or I want to ship a particular app. She said 36 hours to 2 hours by June, go. And that forces you to rethink. You can't make 36 hours to 2 hours just by pushing people a little harder. You have to fundamentally rethink a process, but you can't do it by June in the old way of software development of go write a giant requirements document, do a triplicate RFP, get a consultant in here with a Gantt chart. Like, you have to get started right now, which means you have to apply the expertise of the people you have today, just with new tools and new ways of working. And so, I do think a lot of business leaders and business unit leaders need to start thinking about themselves not as software developers, but as process architects and sort of constraint architects, and really start to apply that level of change. And I think the thing that has moved in the technology is what we used to think of as time, money, and expertise constraints. Those have moved dramatically. And therefore, we can get a lot more bold about the constraints we put on the outcomes.
I love that story, Ryan. That was a marching order that was not based on, I want to take 50% of the cost out of Operation X. It was, this is why we're losing. It's about effectiveness. How do we improve our effectiveness? I love that
I would
story.
say the
Sean,
least interesting. Yeah, sorry. The least interesting thing we can ask this technology is, how do I do everything exactly as I was doing it yesterday with less employees? Like, that is just the fundamentally least
100%.
inspired thing you possibly do. And so I think the teams that are really embracing that ambition are the ones that are going to make the most of the technology by far.
Awesome. Sean.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree that the business imperatives that we are seeing from our customers are expressed that way, and not in the I mean, it starts as, how can I cram AI into my world and make it work for me? But those are toothless mandates. Like, they don't actually mean anything. It's just like, that's just nothing but fear, putting fear inside of an organization that I'm falling behind, instead of really dissecting where I know I am slow, and where I can make outsized improvements. And the realization of those things happens, as we've all been talking about, where people live in the problem. The woman, Ryan, that you were talking to, she was probably not in the engineering organization.
Exactly.
She was living the problem of a 36-hour quote. And so how can we safely make it such that the people that are living the problem can solve the problem? I was listening to Ghazi talk, and what popped into my head was a quote from Jurassic Park, which was, we've been so busy thinking about whether we can do the thing, we haven't been thinking about whether we should do the thing. Right? There are roles in an organization for a reason, and I'm not suggesting that that business folks can't create production software. They can. And they should, because they're the ones that know what the problems are. But you have to be able to capture. And I'm not suggesting, guys, that you were saying that be irresponsible and just let everybody, go wild. I know you well enough. I know that's not what you're saying. I'm saying just general for the audience. There has to be the right set of guardrails. And sometimes the business can create those guardrails. Sometimes they cannot. Right? They are not close enough to the stack and how that stack needs to be accessed in the proper ways. I don't think anybody is advocating to say that somebody should prompt your RBAC implementation or your SSO implementation or like any of the other things that are just like core. We used to call it I can't remember how it used to be, like multimodal IT or some crap like that, which was you had a part of your IT that just didn't move. And then you had another part of your IT that recognized that and did all the fast stuff that you needed to do, understanding that this was necessarily slow. I think we have graduated a bit from that. We've gotten a lot more nimble from there. But there are still things, those layers that need to be in place and accounted for inside of the platform. So I do think that there is a responsible way that all of us represent for embracing that business user, to allow them to like sit back in their seat for a second and think about the 36-hour problem. Like where am I slow? Because technology aside, the thing that I struggle is that, as all of us, I'm sure, we're in back-to-back meetings, and we're in constant catch-up mode. When do we have an opportunity to sit back and think? Which is I believe something that all of us should do. I'm trying to think about how I can create personal agents in my life to help me out and do all of those kind of things. Boy, would it be great to take a week off to go and think about that. Right. But having business users sit back in their seat and think for a second, what are those things? Because as we talked about earlier in the discussion, the technology and that now exists that you can turn those things into something. You don't have to stymie those thoughts anymore. So those are my thoughts. So.
Ghazi, when your colleague Cody Lowe came on last week, he talked a bunch about culture and about we talked about guardrails, and Ryan, I think you hit on culture too a bit, in that, what is your role as a business leader, and can you put in place? So I'm guessing that I know the answer to my question. Your answer to my question was yes, hell yes. What have you seen in terms of organizations building up cultures, building up the support structures to allow business people to play a really fundamental role?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies by organization, is what I've seen here with our customers. There isn't a one size fits all answer. I think it varies by organization, but the philosophy, I think, is starting to resonate. And the philosophy is, there's a lot of people inside a company that have ideas on what to go build that are non-developers and engineers and non-IT. So let's equip those people to go bring their ideas to life. Right? That is that's the business persona and the business individuals, is they have a lot of ideas. Why should they be bottlenecked by getting their ideas built by IT? Empower them to go build what they want to go build, because these are smart people. They live in the day, and they have they work with end customers. They have a direct hand influence as to what the problem is that needs to be solved, and they want to go build it, but they don't have the technical knowledge to go build it. So we are removing the technical debt that these people need to go build ideas. So they're building ideas, but then it's like, okay, how do you control who's building, what they're building, how often they're building, and is it sanctioned? So we 100% do not advocate a wild, wild west of like everybody and their mom and pop within a company building, from hobby apps all the way to production ready apps, and people don't. That's not what we are about. So there needs to be sanctions and guardrails put on what's being built, and that's a conversation with business and IT to come to the table on an agreement on what needs to be done. So that's what we see is like all of our enterprise deals. And like I said, most of our users are non technical, non-STEM builders. That's how those conversations happen. And sometimes in organizations, we start off with only one team building. Okay, that's how Replit gets in. Replit is like, okay, Replit is only sanctioned initially for the product teams. And maybe we're going to make the product team ultra successful. And if that goes well, we'll get opened into the HR team. If that goes well, we'll go into the finance team. If that goes well, that's usually how it goes within most organizations is we usually get in, make that team successful, see how that's done, and then get the right to go do more. And that's a model that we work with pretty well, and we can put some guardrails on it just to kind of make sure it's a win-win. IT is happy, business people are happy because they don't have the bottleneck of having to go to IT to get their ideas built, and IT is happy because they can actually govern it and seeing what's being built by a sanctioned, approved team. So that's kind of what I see in most of our enterprise deals and how they go down here.
Cool. The CIO is happy because the people with the pitchforks and torches are not parked outside the door.
Well,
Just-
and it takes just from a workload perspective, there's only enough hours in the day, right? So they're somewhat relieved that they don't have to go build these internal tools that they previously had to go build. Someone else is actually.
Yep. Jithan, you guys have had you guys over at ServiceNow have had an abiding commitment over the years to empowering business people. How has this set of technology advances allowed you to really pursue that further?
Yeah, so our customers typically buy the platform as the notion where, along with the power of all of our other market leading out of the box solutions like IT, HR, customer service, all of it, along with it, they buy our platform to extend or custom build many of these incredibly mission critical applications, which kind of covers thousands of these processes, which never makes it above the cut line from an IT prioritization point of view. There is, if you look at a lot of researchers in the market, including The Economist in 2022, classic IT backlog scenario is at least they are 6 to 12 months behind in terms of automating every application. Going back to what Ghazi is talking about, we have a wide spectrum of practices which the customers embrace. We have one of the largest bank in Latin America, Banco do Brasil. We have more than 2,000 actual business folks built 2,000 plus applications managed by probably 10 IT developers at the back end. And when I say manage, the role of an IT there is the enabler role. And they are the one who are setting the right environment, guardrails, and also making sure it has the right, all the way from R back to integrations to connectivity to everything they do. But think about that scenario, right? Where you have so many backmans out there who are incredibly powerful, understand the world of their operations in the business. Then you have all these Robins on the IT side who is enabling 10 or 100 more actual business teams who knows how best to build it. We have a customer in those kind of category quite a lot. I saw a good amount of growth while we were just spoke about low code as a way to empower and make it accessible for everybody in the world. In the vibe code world, I am seeing that doubling in terms of the acceleration of velocity where customers would embrace it, especially when we go with the whole whole positioning that it's a platform where you have integrated all your other systems, whether it's IT, HR, and all of it, but governance becomes a DNA. It's an invisible layer versus it's a bolt-on or an added layer or it's a force-fitted layer. And how do you make sure you have the right systems and the environments which some of these business users can actually build on? While this is very invisible, it's the best practices. Like example, we have one of our powerful technology which we launched is called Build Agent. and it's all vibe coding, and it cuts across multiple layers of modalities, whether it's no code, low code, pro code, right? And when you think about that, build agent understands the context of everything customer has on the platform across all of these operations, and it has got decades worth of understanding of how these business operations and processes are built on it, and also consistently recommending the best way to build. When they prompt, I would like to build a budget tracking application as an example, right? It's not only looking at the awareness within the operations of the customer across all these departments, but at the same time leveraging the actual insights which we get from the broad wide world internet, in terms of how there's a power of the LLMs and everything at the back end. So the way we think about it is IT really becomes the enabler, and that's what a lot of customers embracing at the moment and their role is not to actually constrain and block or review and vet and slow down. Their role is to, how do we accelerate getting through the IT backlog, automating the entire enterprise?
Yep.
And I see that progressing much faster. Their role becomes more of an architect, an extending and expanding and scaling the applications which are actually getting built.
That's awesome. I'll tell you, I'm just so encouraged because we've been fighting this battle for a long, long time to try to get companies to really embrace the concept. It's really heartening to hear the progress you guys are describing. All right, let's finish up with art of the possible. You know, our first podcast with a group of vendors like this, Rob Kopowitz asked for predictions. I'm more interested in what are the coolest things you're seeing out there that illustrate where this set of technologies can take us. Sean, to your point, if we really embrace it, I think everybody made that point. If we really embrace it, and Sean, let's start with you this time. Art of the possible. What's the coolest, most exciting thing that excites you the most?
You said the most, so I'm gonna have to shrink it down a bit, because it is both the most exciting and terrifying time to be alive in technology that I've experienced in my life. You know, if I look at my career in this space across a number of different companies that have been searching for the answers here, the most exciting thing about generative AI is it is the technology that actually makes solving the problem in our grasp. Right? It has always been this elusive thing. There have always been these core trade-offs of, flexibility being the enemy of simplicity. Like, how much expressiveness can I actually put into the tooling? How dynamic can I make the abstractions in this environment? Where generative AI comes in and unshackles some of that. And it when used reasonably, appropriately, woven into a full technology stack and platform to properly and safely embrace it, not just in the creation, but also in the execution of this tooling, that it allows an organization to turn shadow IT into supported IT, right? Tool sprawl isn't the enemy, but we've been talking about it like that. Ungoverned tool sprawl can be the enemy, right? Untrusted tool sprawl can be the enemy. Making it such that anybody with a brain for building, no matter what, being able to create whatever they want. It could be ephemeral apps. It could be ephemeral automations. It could be things that live for 5 years and everything in between. If all of that can happen inside of that sanctioned level environment, like, it sounds so very dystopian to say that that constraints or governance actually increase creativity and productivity and efficiency. It's not when overdone, but when properly done. And when you create, like, maybe an analogy is those bumper guards that I need when I go bowling, so that the ball actually hits the pins. Like, if you think about it that way inside of an enterprise, that the art of the possible is getting to that environment where everybody who is fundamentally capable of building, thinking about how to build, can. Like, the other part of it, though, is it's we have mostly today been talking about apps, right? So I create a thing that's got an interface so that a human can get their job done faster. Well, with agentic technologies, with the automation of reason, we now have the ability to decide what the future of apps are going to look like. Right, all the apps that we have been creating to date have been to codify and make easier a workflow that a human normally had to do manually. Well, now they can do it a little bit faster because they can go from 36 hours to 2 hours. Right. Well, what if it was just immediate? Right. What if the answer did not require human intervention because we've been able to trust the non-deterministic reasoning of an LLM to guide the reply there. That's where I think it really becomes incredible as we move into the combination of apps and automations, how those work together, how we orchestrate the response to incredibly sophisticated things that happen inside of an enterprise. Like at Retool, we did a study when we launched our agents capability early last year, where our customers had already automated 100 million hours of labor. Like that is, and you say a thing like that, and the market's like, oh, no. Like the people that were manually plowing fields did not mind jumping on a tractor. Right. And so like that is the future that we're headed for. So sorry, I could go on like this forever, but like it is the thing that is so exciting to me is one, we can finally solve the problem that we've been trying to solve forever. And two, it's the evolution of what now gets handled so that I, as a human, can do the things that I really enjoy doing instead of the things that I have to do to get my day-to-day done.
Yep. Love your passion. Ghazi, over to you. What's really blowing you away that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, I'll make it quick because I got to hop for a call here at the top of the hour. So the art of the possible is pretty impressive. What I've experienced so far is not only have I seen companies start their own businesses, I mean, literally startups build their own businesses utilizing Replit. I've seen entrepreneurs doing a side hustle, making millions of dollars using Replit. And then I've seen companies that are replacing systems of record using Replit. And, this is very controversial, but there are mid-sized companies that we have as customers that have basically offset CRM costs by a leading CRM provider and built it on Replit. I have companies that have offset HCM costs for human capital management and built it on Replit. And I'm not talking just one or two. I'm seeing several examples of that. And I know there's a lot of press and buzz out about, the future of SaaS. Again, you take this with a grain of salt. I don't think like SaaS is going to die. I think like enterprise grade SaaS and enterprise grade ERP will still exist. But I think for the segment of customers that are smaller in nature and they're looking to help with cost justification, I think this is a perfect use case of how you can actually get functionality by offsetting costs that were traditionally not possible before. So, going back to the art of the possible, those are very impactful things that I'm seeing right now.
It hits the build versus buy calculations of people. And
that's right.
What about you? What are you seeing that really blows you away?
The build and the buy. Two things we are really focused on from a strategy point of view. One is about making sure CEOs have the right answer under the pressure that they have to turn their enterprise into an AI native enterprise. That's one. The second one I'm extremely personally passionate about, something that Sean is talking about, and all of you, Ryan, as well. How do we empower everyone to be able to build applications in the right way on platforms across whatever they have access to? So building an application with vibe coding and low code, I think we all are solving it pretty well. And I believe we have solved it to quite a good extent. We are thinking about how do we take it to the next level. Goes back to, I believe it was Sean who was speaking about what agent you would build. It's not like, if you go to all of these vibe coding tools and agentic tools and all of it, the question you are asked on that chat window, what would you like to do today? Or what would you like to make today or create today? So we are making it easy for our customers to automatically identify the right business processes and agents who could be built leveraging our technologies like process mining. We are also launching something called an agent miner pretty shortly, where it'll look at the entire enterprise operations and business processes, which we already have on our platform, and consistently recommend what those best-in-class business processes, apps, and agents within. The second thing, answering the question of CIO to make sure their enterprise is actually moving into the direction of AI native. Our vibe coding agent, we call it build agent. Every time the build agent builds an application, it's consistently looking and identifying which out of those business processes could be an agentic process versus a classic business role. So effectively, as the build agent is building an application, it's automatically identifying number of agents which will perform the job of an actual user or a maintenance, whomever is managing that application on the other end. So every application, our goal is, that's what the technology, these are the two things I'm really excited about. One, the ability to take the anxiety off of what agent to build. The second one is every time an application is built, there is a AI native agent which is embedded within. And I'll tell you why it's important. If you think about an application as a construct, there are parts of the application really need to be deterministic. Going back to Ryan's example of a journal entry, right? It needs to be deterministic. It cannot be hallucinating. It needs to be accurate to the dots and the decimals. But there are parts of getting the journal entry could be through multiple variables, which could actually pull in order to be able to, and all those toil work, which the tractor analogy, what Sean is talking about, could all be solved through this agent, enabling the person who is actually managing this application 5x and 10x from a productivity point of view. That's how we are bringing the both worlds together. Every app for us will be an agentic app with the AI agent embedded in the future. And it was a long answer, but something I'm really passionate about and we are pushing for.
Thank you. Ryan, bring us home.
Look, we're seeing all of the above. We are absolutely seeing customers sunset and delete a bunch of point solution SaaS and bespoke things, recreate it, and not just recreate it pixel for pixel, but reimagine it with agents at the core and a much more efficient output. That is happening now. We are also seeing customers launch entirely new business lines they didn't think they could have gotten into because the calculus has changed on how labor will work and how software will get built. All that is super cool. We're doing it ourselves too. We have parts of our own code base that, are maybe not as critical to this future that we have been able to compress by half the number of engineers that are maintaining and still see 40-50% improvement in overall stability, the number of times we have to wake an engineer up in dark hours to service it. And a lot of that creativity is even going into just how do we run our own businesses more efficiently so that we can set up bandwidth to go launch new things 10 times faster than we thought it would have taken us before. Things that would have taken 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to bring to market, we're now bringing to market in weeks, and that is super exciting. And so it really feels like we're on the cusp of this creative renaissance. I'm going to kind of bring it back to the tractor analogy. 200 years ago, the super majority of jobs in this country were in agriculture. It is a little bit like going back to 1826 and asking somebody like, what's the art of the possible with the steam engine? There's a lot of stuff that we just have not even imagined yet that we can start to do. You fast forward to today, that's less than 3% of our jobs in the U.S. is in agriculture. I have relatives in southern Minnesota who farm corn and soy and have gym memberships because of how automated that work has become. And yet we have so much more abundance available now. And I think if you go look forward of like, what does that abundance thesis really looks like? It gets super exciting for the...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Guys, this has been a great conversation. We are very grateful that you've come out, you've been able to come and join this conversation. You're helping a lot of people understand how they might use this new technology. Ghazi, thank you. Jithan, Ryan, Sean, thank you very much. Guys, again, this is a Lowdown on Low Code from analysis.tech. Hit the like button, hit the share button, tell your friends and neighbors if you find this content useful, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
There you go.
Thank you all.